H1, H2, H3. Just 3 cars, but 8 tons of metal. The Hummer family. For those who want to play war games on the way to work, we recommend the H1. A 6.5-litre diesel, 8 cylinders and 2 meters 20 wide, plus wing mirrors. Everyone gives way when this car's around. The H1's only good for straight stretches or drives through the country. Due to the balloon tires, taking fast curves isn't advisable. Those who want to spit at Cayenne drivers through their sunroofs need to get themselves an H2, a 6-litre V8 engine and the body of an armored recovery vehicle. According to a survey, the H2's fuel consumption has shocked even American consumers. That says it all. Our test, 100 kilometers on about 30 liters. And now the new one, the H3, the baby Hummer. At 1.89 meters, it is still much higher than a VW Touareg. It doesn't like fast curves, even though it can do 0 to 100 in just under 10 seconds. This car has less roll than the H2, but drivers will still be glad to have ESP on board. These 3 vehicles total about 300,000 euros. None of the Hummers are made for high-speed driving. The fastest is the H3 with a top speed of 160. The original Hummer. Ever since an Austrian strongman who had made his fortune in California decided he wanted an Army-issue H1, there's also been a civilian version, though it's only available through importers in Germany. The H1 even has 2 tanks. One holds 95 liters, the other 64. The cockpit looks more like a command post than a place for a steering wheel. The tire pressure on each axle can be controlled from the cockpit when driving over sand, for example. Our H1 has gear reduction and planetary gear lockers that are activated with the brake pedal. Front and rear differential lockers have been available as additional features since 2006. Only trees and cliffs can hold this car back. If, despite the 76-centimeter fording depth, water manages to get inside, you pull out the plug in the footwell and the water drains away just like in the bath. It's incredible how effortlessly this car plows through despite its empty weight of 3.5 tons. And now comes the mud bit. Here's where the Hummer shows what it's made of. They say only a Unimog is a match for the H1. Just a tap on the brakes and the planetary gears are locked. Now we know who's boss. 40 centimeters of ground clearance, not even a mountain goat has that much. This car really doesn't need roads. The H1 has independent wheel suspension instead of a beam axle, but that doesn't mean it won't fight its way free. This one looks like it's carved out of stone too. It doesn't weigh 3.5 tons, but merely 2.9. Passengers sit up high as if they were in a coach. The back windscreen can be rolled down. This is a standard feature. The cockpit of the H2 is like that of a car, not a tank like the H1. Like the H1, the H2 has gear reduction on board. In addition, it has a manual rear axle locking option. That does the trick for the rough stuff. We're not blown away by the ground clearance. 25 centimeters is nothing to shout about, although the optional air suspension gets you at least an extra 2 centimeters. But the fording depth is half a meter, and that rates pretty well with us. You could call the throaty revving of the V8 sexy. A vehicle over 2 meters off the ground makes one wary of taking too steep of a lateral incline. It can probably do much more, but as a driver you don't dare try. That we admit. When taking a sudden climb, the lack of ground clearance rears its ugly head, and you have to plan your route very carefully to avoid grounding. The mud test. The H2 gets bogged down easily. But we've got an ace up our sleeves. The rear axle lockers. And despite weighing just under 3 tons, this monster fights its way out. Hummer number 3. Its designer could work designing bank vaults and fortifications. Like its big brother, it has a tough-as-nails look. It's the smallest of the bunch, but still enormous. To park it, you need a space nearly as big as a bus stop. We strongly recommend parking assistance sensors. Manufacturer General Motors clearly targeted Europe with this model. That's why the interior is so pleasingly un-American. The standard model only has gear reduction on board. The rear axle lockers are optional, but that makes the H3 a bargain in comparison. But the manual gearbox and fabric upholstery is a bit economy class. The H3 can ford 61 centimeters of water. After that, it's wet feet. At less than 22 centimeters, the ground clearance just isn't enough. The new H3 has no V8 and not even a V6. Instead, there's a 5-cylinder petrol engine with 223 horsepower and 3.5 liters displacement. So you've got a chance of getting your petrol consumption down to under 20 liters per 100 kilometers. The manufacturer claims you can get it as low as 12. The rear of the H3 is old-school 4x4, a solid axle, leaf springs, everything screwed into a central frame. This is how it manages to get out of this tight spot. In mud, we reckon the lack of rear axle lockers means the vehicle will roll. But the little guy among the giants does the job well. Very well, in fact. To sum up, this kid shouldn't be underestimated. After all, it only weighs 2,132 kilos. All three are monsters. Off-road, the H1 is unbeatable. The H2 is a great head-turner. On-road, we'll take the H3, merely because it's the only one with ESP on board. There's a saying that a man should plant a tree, build a house, and father a son in his lifetime. We think a real man should also have driven a Hummer. No question.